Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of light season offense matches. I've been getting quite a lot of practice in with Gullveig ahead of the CYL bonus season, and it was a funny bit of luck to see it also be another wind week, which meant that this team saw absolutely no changes from a couple of weeks ago. The team operates as a highly mobile hit-and-run squad with a bit of gale force in the mix. Even without the bonus stats, Gullveig is an extremely capable wall breaker, and her limited version of Raging Storm lets her dismantle multiple key pieces of an enemy team without needing a dance. Flared Sparrow complements that well, limiting the movement of ranged opponents to make it much easier to stay safely out of reach. Yuri's a great support for her. His ability to disarm any trap gives her full access to tiles that would normally be risky to move into, while the combination of foul play, Kanto, and cavalry mobility helps him navigate through any layout of structures, especially with Ash helping him to jump over walls. Having an extra dancer on the team is a great way to round things out, either by giving Gullveig extra attacks or by helping the team navigate back out of the danger zone. Triandra's Firestorm dance is particularly nice to have, since the extra post-dance movement really helps to position the dancers properly. I also found an excuse to let Corrin take some of the spotlight this week. While she does make an exceptionally strong save tank, I decided to give her Speed Smoke to play around with instead. Since nothing in her kit requires a nearby ally, this lets her plant herself in the enemy team's face to distract them while the rest of her squad stays a safe distance back. The extra damage reduction plays really well with the flat mitigation in her Realms United skill too. The rest of her team is set up to support her from across the map. Hollywood, as usual, is an excellent support for any raid boss strategy, and Null Panic is especially useful during a Uni bonus week. Gatekeeper's another great cross-map support option, offering her another spectrum of stats along with extra healing, and, most importantly, stopping any chance for the enemy team to warp past Corrin and reach the backline. Now that we've gone over the teams, let's get to the first match. This map was a fun setup to see. It's a bit of a corridor charge strategy using the Brave Seliph and Geo Docker to threaten most of the map. Docker ends up reaching the same tiles that Seliph does, thanks to the legendary Hinoke in the backline giving her charge, and she does a good job of complementing Seliph by covering him against any blue tanks that might usually give him trouble. Using Triandra as their 7th slot unit does mean that they can't quite catch up as far as they might like to, though, especially if someone just baits from the maximum distance. We're not planning to bait at the maximum distance here, though, and we can just have Gatekeeper reposition Corrin forwards, and let her plonk right in range of all of them.
Maybe this way.
Tanking from here also means that we're not getting hit by Embla, which means that Corrin's allowed to get the full set of support from Gatekeeper, Peony, and Milla, to just shrug off anything that comes at her this turn. The Harsh command comes out of Yune, but we're not too worried about that. Even with it, Hinoka's not really getting anything done to Corrin here, and can't even break through her post-combat healing. And, well, if Hinoka's not breaking through that post-combat healing, the rest of her team is not going to have a very good time of it, especially once the Speed Smoke is online and shutting down all of their damage even harder.
Believe in me.
The trap actually ends up doing quite a lot of work for us here too. Seliph only ends up moving now because he wasn't able to move more than one space to attack Corrin,
Believe in me.
which means that his clash skill is very limited and isn't even neutralizing any penalties that he would be getting from the Speed Smoke and everywhere else. Nobody else ends up catching us here.
I will not
Yune
fear.
ends up not moving at all, which gives us a great opportunity to trap her in place and make it much easier for us to pick up the pots and clean things up afterwards. Having Armored Flow pre-charged after that last combat means that Corrin can just take out Edelgard, and then stay in place instead of using Kanto, which is going to let us use Milla to smite her forward, and in position to block Yune from going anywhere.
My turn?
I'm not worried about her tanking Triandro, so from here it's just a matter of slowly moving forwards to collect these Aether pots before we close out the match.
This is my path.
I do not object.
Like this.
Reporting for duty. My turn?
Good morning.
Greetings! Let's see now.
Truly?
I bestow my blessing.
Understood.
This match was where we went back to using Gullveig. While it was tempting to have Corrin tank the effective damage triangle attacks from Alm and Crom, it just ended up being a better map for Gullveig to tackle, even with the Brave Edelgard trying to keep them safe from any ranged hit and run approaches. It's a fairly basic catch-ray ball overall. They're just trying to use triangle attack as a multiplier for Alm and Crom to overwhelm anything trying to tank them. Although Crom can be a bit of a sneaky run-by if you're not careful. As long as he uses Fate Changed on either the Alm or Edelgard, he has 4 movement for his second action, and that can be more than enough for him to sneak past a front line and attack something you weren't expecting him to reach.
Like this.
Right.
We're not planning to tank this, though, so after we foul play Gullveig and Peony in, we can just get to work on the team. By making sure I have Peony in Gullveig's column, it's enough for her to actually just one-shot the Edelgard and not have to tank a hit on the counter, before going on to take out Alm and wipe out their front line. With their front line out of the way, it's much easier for us to just dance Gullveig and retreat out of the way, and get ready for the next turn.
Good morning.
Setting up for this next turn was important. I needed to make sure that Milla was in Crom's column, and by positioning her there, she not only stops Crom from being able to use Fate Changed to try and catch us here, but she also shuts down Azura's dance. So, if we take out Triandra here, they don't have any dancers or extra actions left to try and catch up to us with. We can also have Peony dance Gullveig and go ahead and take out the Medius as well. And by foul playing Triandra forwards, she can get in range to dance Gullveig after this. And after the Kanto control is knocked out, she can back out of range herself, letting Gullveig just jump past both dancers and take out the tactic room. And since we've stayed out of range there, it's fairly straightforward from here. Gullveig can just start things off by taking out Azura. Then move over and finish off Crom.
Once more, once more.
And from there we just need to make sure we pick up these Aether pots before we close things out.
Blessing.
Smiting Yuri forwards puts him in range of the first one, and Ash is already in melee range of the second,
Lord Asker, guide us.
so we can just dance Gullveig
Ready.
and close out the match.
It will be so.
This map was a fun one to plan out. It's another Catria ball, this time with 2 safe armors in the bonus week Brave Corrin and the Brave Edelgard. They're also using the desert map with the fortress and wall to limit the ways you can approach this team. Together with the placement of the structures and traps, it can be tricky to get in on top of this team on the first turn and still make it back out to take advantage of your safety fence. The triangle attack enabled Windy Claw is also a pretty good way to deter any tanking strategies, so this team can be a bit tricky to handle if you're not careful. Thankfully, Gullveig's bonus week stats mean that she can attack from on top of this hex trap without worrying about it, and take out Corrin with her first action. While she does end up taking a counterattack here, we did find the hex trap with this attack, which means we don't have to worry about it going forwards, and we're not expecting her to take any counterattacks from any of the rest of this team. The second attack can take out Medius without any real problems. And knocking out Medius here also removes Kendo control from their team, which lets us navigate the map a little more freely. Ash lets Peony jump forward and give Gullveig her first dance, and from here we can use a little bit of maneuvering to also get Triandra in the mix. Having Triandra past that throne means that Gullveig can move in and snipe a third enemy this turn. Before getting danced one more time and moving everybody out to safety. And we can even pick off this Bright Shrine on the way out to make sure it's not debuffing Gullveig too much for the next turn. Knocking out 3 enemies on the first turn makes this next one a lot easier to navigate, but we do still want to limit the ways that they could potentially reach us. And the best way to do that is to just knock out everything except for Eldigan. Moving Gullveig all the way in here to snipe Catfreya first means that as long as we Kanto back and dance twice, we're always going to stay out of Eldigan's range. And since Triandra also has Kanto, that's not too hard to do.
Like this.
The first dance means we can take out Claude.
The cycle's power.
And then Peony can jump forward and give us one more dance to take out Yune.
It will be so.
And since Eldigan is using Odd Tempest, he can't catch us this turn, which gives us just enough time to pick up both of the Aether Pots before we close out the match.
Good morning.
Give me an order.
It matters not.
This was a fun match to run into and plan out. It's a sort of pseudo Hinoka Fireball, using a New Year's Ash and Duo Asker as the sort of front lines for the team. New Year's Ash in particular is a great option for this squad since she does a good job of simulating Soaring Guidance for her team, and enabling this threat ranges to synchronize a lot better than they might be able to otherwise. The Windy Claw is, as usual, a major threat to try and tank, and together with Catfrey enabling all of this team, it's not really something you would feel comfortable just plonking.
Maybe this way.
We did figure out a way to approach
Give me
this,
an
though.
order.
If we foul-play Gullveig forward and
I bestow my blessing.
get everybody else in position,
I cannot object.
we can actually end up just sniping Claude,
As always.
and then taking advantage of Gullveig's bonus week stats, move over to knock out the Asker as well without worrying about the Hex Trap. From there, we can Kanto back and then dance Gullveig, and move one tile over to avoid the extra threat range that'll pop up when Emblet transforms on this coming turn. Knocking out those two is a good first step, but we do still need to be very careful on this coming turn to stay out of their threat range after we pick off a couple of units. I did make two key mistakes going into this turn. The first was not actually Kantoing Yuri up a tile. I think I was moving a little bit too quickly here, and forgot to plan for Embla not actually threatening that tile. Yuri occupying this tile doesn't end this for me right away. We can still dance Gullveig and go in to finish off Embla, and still have a way to reposition Peony out of the extra threat range that Ashe is offering her team. Fortunately, I ended up making one more mistake here by Kantoing Triandra down. If I'd Kantoed over to the left instead, I could have moved Ashe forward onto Triandra's tile, and used that area to warp Gullveig down to reposition Peony out of the way. As is, we don't actually have any options to get Peony back out of harm's way, and with that, it would mean that we lose a unit. So I just surrender the match and move on. I was hoping for that last match to be a highlight to close out the week with, but this was a really cool setup to run into. While it is odd to only see a single defense mythic on the team, this out-of-season Robin is enabling 6 different double unity effects for his squad. The pulse effects from Medius and Asker also enable 2 pre-charged Spiral 4 specials for the team, while Catria's Guidance 4 gives them a much longer reach than it might seem at first. It isn't easy to attack into this team either, especially if you can't get into them on the first turn, which isn't easy with these structures and traps in the way. The double unity stacking turns them into a really scary ball of stats. Corrin in particular has a fun stat total that lets Robin give her a full spectrum of penalties.
Like this.
Thankfully, we do have some practice with navigating into setups like this on the first turn, and once again, Gullveig's extra hit points from her bonus week let her ignore this Hex Trap to take out North before he can try to speed check her. And from there, we can step over, take out Catria, and severely limit their movement options for the coming turn. They do have 2 sources of Kanto control, which means that we can't quite navigate out of this as easily as we might like, but Ashe does let Triandra warp in, dance Gullveig, and let us reposition to safety on this first turn. Things are still a little tricky here. This tactic room is actually very annoying by gravitying both Gullveig and Triandra, but we can get around that just by moving Ashe forward to let them both warp in and get in on the rest of the team.
Fade away.
Medius is a good first target, and the easy one to pick off, and is actually going to be the only one we can safely take out this turn. Mostly because of Robin being a backup Kanto control. Thankfully, we can still reposition back, and with a foul play for Peony, give Ashe a dance, and let her get out of the danger zone as well.
Good morning. I do not object.
And now that they've moved forward, it's a lot easier to start picking apart their team. Robin can be our first target. The damage he's taken from Lysithea is actually helping us to finish him off here, which is kind of considerate. And then from there they just start falling over.
The cycle's power.
After Asker, Dance lets us take out Lysithea and remove the last options they really have to try and catch us here. And from there we can just start working on reaching these Aether pots, so that we can try and have a clean finish to the week.
Lord Asker, guide us.
And after we do, we can have Gullveig move in and take out Corrin
As always.
to bring the week to a close.
Once more, once more.
This was a relatively quiet week overall, but it was fun to see Corrin get in on the action. Still a bit annoyed with myself over that slip-up at the end of the week, but it's a learning experience. I'm very happy with Gullveig's performance overall, and I'm looking forward to using her for a long time to come. I have a Discord channel if you'd like to hang out and chat. There's a link in the description, and I've also got a Patreon link there if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.